before the sun rises, before the streets fill with noise, before the world begins its endless movement of tasks, deadlines, and expectations, there is a moment, a quiet moment most people never notice, a moment when everything is still, no messages, no notifications, no demands, just silence. But even in that silence, most minds are already racing, replaying yesterday's mistakes, imagining conversations that never happened, predicting problems that may never arrive, worrying about outcomes that exist only in imagination. And so, before the day has even begun, exhaustion has already arrived, not because the world attacked them, but because their own mind never stopped fighting. This is the hidden struggle of modern life. The world constantly tells us that our greatest battles are external: competition, success, recognition, money, status, power. But the ancient Stoic philosophers understood something deeper. The real battle has always been internal, and until that battle is understood, every victory outside will feel strangely incomplete, because no amount of achievement can quiet a restless mind, no promotion can silence inner chaos, and no external control can replace inner mastery. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote a line in his private journal nearly 2,000 years ago, a line that still echoes through philosophy today. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. At first glance, the statement seems simple, almost obvious, but its meaning is far deeper than most people realize. Because accepting this idea requires letting go of one of humanity's most powerful illusions, the illusion of control. Human beings are natural planners. We create schedules, we design goals, we imagine the future. Planning is not the problem. Planning gives direction. It allows us to move forward with intention. But somewhere along the way, something subtle happens. Planning slowly transforms into control, and control slowly transforms into expectation. We begin believing that if we organize life perfectly, nothing will go wrong. If we say the right things, people will understand us. If we work hard enough, success will be guaranteed. If we prepare carefully, the future will cooperate. But life rarely follows our script. Plans collapse, people change, opportunities vanish, unexpected events appear without warning. And when reality refuses to follow the story we created in our mind, frustration begins. At first, it is small, a moment of irritation, a brief feeling of disappointment. But when these moments accumulate, they transform into something heavier: anxiety, stress, exhaustion. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus described this problem with remarkable clarity. He wrote, "Some things are in our control, and some things are not." It sounds almost too simple, but inside this short sentence lies one of the most powerful psychological insights ever recorded. Because most people spend the majority of their emotional energy focused on the wrong category. They worry about other people's opinions. They replay conversations that already happened. They obsess over events that cannot be reversed. They fear outcomes that may never occur. And all of this mental activity feels productive. It feels like preparation. It feels like responsibility. But in reality, it is simply resistance against reality. Slow pause. The Stoics saw this clearly. They divided life into two fundamental domains: things we can control and things we cannot. Our actions, our choices, our responses, our perspective, these belong to us. But the economy, other people's thoughts, the past, unexpected events, the future, these do not. And yet modern life trains people to obsess over the second category, to chase certainty in an uncertain world, to seek stability in constantly changing conditions, to control the uncontrollable. The result? A mind that never rests, a mind constantly preparing for threats that may never appear. But the moment a person truly understands this Stoic principle, something extraordinary happens. Energy returns, because the mind is no longer fighting impossible battles. Instead, attention returns to the only place real power exists, the inner world, your judgments, your decisions, your discipline, your perspective. This is the beginning of freedom, not freedom from difficulty, not freedom from uncertainty, but freedom from unnecessary suffering. And once a person begins to understand this distinction, life begins to change in subtle but profound ways, because they start noticing something most people never see. The storm was never outside, it was always inside, and learning to calm that storm is where the real work begins. The human mind has a strange habit. It tries to predict the future, as if prediction were protection. We imagine conversations before they happen. We rehearse arguments. We prepare responses to criticism that may never come. We calculate outcomes again, and again, and again. And the mind tells us this is wisdom, preparation, responsibility. But often, it is something else entirely. It is fear disguised as control. The Stoic philosopher Seneca observed this tendency nearly 2,000 years ago. He wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Pause for a moment and consider what he meant. Most human suffering does not come from the present moment. It comes from the mind's attempt to live in the future, imagining disaster, predicting failure, rehearsing humiliation, constructing elaborate scenarios where everything goes wrong. But these scenarios exist only in thought, not in reality. And yet the body responds as if they were real. Heart rate increases, muscles tighten, sleep becomes restless, energy disappears, all because the mind is fighting battles that have not happened. This is one of the great paradoxes of human intelligence. The same imagination that allows us to build civilizations can also trap us in endless anxiety. The ability to foresee the future is powerful, but when that foresight becomes obsession, it transforms into a prison. Consider how much of daily worry is focused on things completely outside our influence. Other people's opinions, unexpected economic changes, the possibility of rejection, the fear of embarrassment, or the uncertainty of outcomes. None of these can be fully controlled, yet people spend enormous amounts of emotional energy trying to manage them. The Stoic teacher Epictetus addressed this directly. He said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." At first, this statement sounds extreme. Why would anyone willingly accept being misunderstood? Why would someone stop trying to control how others see them? But Epictetus understood something fundamental about human freedom. The moment your peace depends on other people's opinions, your peace no longer belongs to you. Think about how often people alter their behavior simply to avoid judgment. They hide ideas, suppress opinions, abandon ambitions. Not because the ideas are wrong, but because they fear criticism. And yet criticism itself is something we cannot control. No matter what you say, someone will misunderstand. No matter what you create, someone will dislike it. No matter what path you choose, someone will question it. Trying to manage every opinion is like trying to hold back the ocean with your hands. Impossible. But once a person truly accepts this reality, something powerful happens. Energy that was once spent managing perceptions returns to the only place it truly belongs: action, growth, creation. Instead of asking, "What will people think?" the question becomes, "Is this aligned with my values?" This shift may seem small, but it changes everything, because now decisions are guided by internal principles, not external approval. This is why Stoic philosophy places such emphasis on character, not reputation, not status, not popularity. Character. Character is something no one else can grant and no one else can take away. It is built quietly through decisions, through discipline, through self-awareness, through moments when you choose the difficult right instead of the easy approval. And this is where the illusion of control finally begins to dissolve, because you realize something liberating. You were never responsible for controlling the world. You were only responsible for directing yourself within it, your effort, your integrity, your mindset, your response to adversity. These are your domain. Everything else belongs to the unfolding nature of life. And once that truth settles into the mind, a strange kind of calm appears, not because life becomes predictable, but because the need for prediction begins to fade. You stop trying to dominate uncertainty, and instead, you learn to stand steady within it. Character is rarely built in moments of comfort. It is not formed when life moves smoothly, when praise is abundant, when every plan succeeds. Those moments feel good, but they teach very little. True character is forged somewhere quieter, somewhere hidden, in the unseen moments when a decision must be made, when anger appears and you choose patience, when fear rises and you choose courage, when chaos surrounds you and you choose calm. These moments may seem small, but each one is a strike of the hammer inside what we might call the silent forge, a place where the raw material of human experience is slowly transformed into strength. Most people pass through life without ever entering this forge consciously. They simply react. Good day, they feel good. Bad day, they feel defeated. Praise arrives. Confidence rises. Criticism appears. Confidence collapses. Their emotional state becomes dependent on external conditions. And because external conditions constantly change, their inner world remains unstable. The Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius understood this instability well. Despite ruling one of the most powerful empires in history, he constantly reminded himself of a simple truth. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. This sentence is short, but its implications are enormous, because it suggests that the mind is not passive, it is creative. The thoughts you repeatedly allow into your mind shape the emotional atmosphere you live in. If the mind constantly rehearses resentment, life will feel hostile. If the mind constantly anticipates danger, life will feel threatening. If the mind constantly compares itself to others, life will feel inadequate. But the reverse is also true. If the mind practices patience, life becomes more tolerable. If the mind practices perspective, problems shrink. If the mind practices gratitude, ordinary moments become meaningful. The Stoics understood that the mind is not simply something we possess. It is something we must train. Slow pause. Imagine a blacksmith working metal in a forge. Raw iron is placed into fire. It becomes hot, soft, malleable. Then the hammer strikes. Again, and again, and again. Each strike shapes the metal. Each strike gives it strength. But without heat and without pressure, the metal remains weak. Human character is built in the same way. Adversity provides the heat, difficulty provides the hammer, and our response determines the final shape. This is why the Stoic teacher Epictetus once said, "Difficulties show what men are." At first glance, adversity feels like an obstacle, something unfair, something that interrupts the life we wanted. But from the Stoic perspective, difficulty is revelation. It reveals impatience. It reveals fear. It reveals ego. It reveals attachment. Not so these flaws can shame us, but so they can be refined. Because what we call weakness is often simply untrained potential. Patience must be practiced. Discipline must be practiced. Courage must be practiced. No one wakes up with these qualities fully formed. They emerge through repetition, through effort, through countless small decisions made in moments when no one else is watching. This is the true meaning of the silent forge. It is not a physical place. It is a process, a continuous shaping of the self. Every irritation becomes an opportunity to practice patience. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity to practice resilience. Every uncertainty becomes an opportunity to practice calm. And gradually, almost invisibly, something remarkable happens. The person who once reacted impulsively begins to respond thoughtfully. The person who once feared criticism begins to act with independence. The person who once felt overwhelmed begins to feel steady, not because life became easier, but because the mind became stronger. The forge is silent. No audience applauds the work happening there. No medals are awarded, but its results are unmistakable. A steadier mind, a calmer presence, a resilience that does not collapse when life becomes difficult. And once someone begins shaping themselves in this way, they realize something extraordinary. Adversity was never the enemy, it was the teacher. Emotions are like waves, powerful, sudden, unpredictable. At times they lift us, at times they crash over us, and most people live as if they are at the mercy of these waves. Anger erupts, fear paralyzes, anxiety tightens the chest. We think, this is life, I cannot control how I feel. But the Stoics disagreed. They believed that while we cannot always control what happens to us, we can control how we respond. The Roman Stoic Seneca said, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." This is the heart of emotional mastery. Most suffering begins not in the events themselves, but in our judgment of them. A harsh word, a failure, a sudden change. None of these are inherently unbearable. It is the mind's interpretation, the story we tell ourselves, that determines the weight. Consider anger. When someone insults you or acts unfairly, the initial reaction is almost always automatic. The body reacts, the heart races, the muscles tighten, the mind rehearses retaliation. But here is the moment that matters, the space between impulse and action. In that gap, a choice exists. Pause for effect. Do you react or do you respond? Do you let the wave sweep over you, or do you meet it calmly and stand firm? Seneca's advice: no man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity. This means our emotional strength is not tested when everything is easy. It is revealed when life is hard, and yet it can also be trained. Fear is similar. Fear often stems from imagining disaster. The mind rehearses every possible negative outcome, and the body reacts as if all of them are real. But in truth, most imagined disasters never occur. The Stoic teacher Epictetus put it simply: it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Pause. Let that sink in. The event itself is neutral, the insult, the failure, the delay. It has no power until you give it power. When we begin to observe our emotions without immediately acting on them, without labeling them as good or bad, we enter the first stage of mastery. Anger becomes a signal, not a command. Fear becomes information, not an order. Anxiety becomes a warning, not a sentence. And once you can see emotions clearly, without being pulled into their currents, you discover freedom. Pause for emphasis. Freedom from emotional slavery is not coldness. It is not indifference. It is the ability to feel fully, without being controlled, to experience life in all its intensity, and yet remain steady. The Stoics described this as apatheia, a state not of emotionlessness, but of clarity, a mind that is unshaken by passing waves, a mind that is ruled by reason, not reflex. Every moment of restraint strengthens the mind. Every choice to respond rather than react builds resilience. Every practice of patience becomes a brick in the fortress of your inner self, because life will continue to throw challenges and the waves will continue to rise. But the person who trains their mind does not collapse beneath them. Emotional mastery is not achieved in a single day. It is forged slowly, in repetition, in the decision to pause before speaking, in the choice to breathe before reacting, in the habit of examining thoughts before surrendering to them. This is the silent work most people never see, the work that determines the quality of every moment of life. And when it begins to take root, life feels fundamentally different. The storms remain, but the sailor becomes steady. The waves no longer dictate the course. The mind becomes a citadel, a place where thoughts, feelings, and impulses are observed, then guided with reason, a place where no external insult can enter without permission, a place where suffering becomes manageable, where strength becomes habitual, where freedom becomes real. This is the first step toward living like a Stoic, not controlling the uncontrollable outside, but mastering the powerful world within. Imagine a fortress, strong walls, deep foundations, guarded gates, a place no enemy can penetrate. Now imagine that fortress exists, not outside, but inside your mind. The Stoics called it the Inner Citadel, a mental stronghold no external storm could destroy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Begin each day by telling yourself, 'Today I shall meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. All of these are from ignorance of good and evil.'" Notice the rhythm of that line. He is not denying the reality of adversity. He is preparing himself for it. He is not asking the world to change. He is asking himself to be ready. This is the essence of the Inner Citadel. It is not denial. It is not avoidance. It is preparation. It is a fortress built in the mind, where thoughts are ordered, where judgment is practiced, where reason is sovereign. And the beauty of this fortress is that no one else can destroy it. No insult can breach the walls. No fortune can shake the gates. No chaos outside can penetrate the calm within. The Inner Citadel is built brick by brick. Every act of patience is a stone. Every choice to respond instead of react is a stone. Every moment of reflection, every act of courage, every refusal to surrender to despair, these are bricks in the walls of your mental fortress. Seneca put it this way: "He who is brave is free." Bravery is not the absence of fear, it is the mastery of it, and mastery of fear is mastery of self. Every day provides new opportunities to build this citadel. When the colleague acts unfairly, you remain calm. When plans collapse, you focus on what you can control. When loss strikes, you grieve without losing perspective. Each of these moments strengthens the walls, and over time, something remarkable happens. The world may continue to fluctuate wildly, events may spiral, people may disappoint, fortunes may rise and fall, but you remain grounded, unshaken, centered, because your security is no longer external, it is internal. Marcus Aurelius also advised, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice the echo. He speaks of the same principle again. The fortress exists not in wealth, not in influence, not in comfort. It exists in the mind, and it is fortified by discipline. Discipline may feel burdensome at first. It asks for consistency, for attention, for reflection, for courage. But discipline is also the key to freedom, because without it, the mind remains a battlefield. External events control the emotions. Desire and fear dominate choices. Peace is fleeting. With discipline, the citadel rises. The mind becomes steady. The storms outside may rage, but inside, there is calm, and there is more. The Inner Citadel allows clarity. With a strong mind, the unnecessary noise of life fades. Gossip, criticism, trivial disputes, they lose their power. Your attention is reserved for what matters. Action guided by reason replaces reaction guided by impulse. Peace guided by insight replaces anxiety guided by fear. Freedom guided by principle replaces bondage guided by desire. This is the ultimate Stoic vision. Not a life without challenges, not a life without suffering, but a life where suffering does not dominate. A life where challenges refine instead of destroy. A life where the mind becomes a fortress. A citadel impervious to the chaos outside. And building this fortress requires something everyone has: attention, observation, choice. Notice your thoughts, observe your reactions, choose how to respond. One day the bricks become walls, the walls become towers, the towers become an unshakable stronghold, and within it, you discover what all the Stoics sought: peace, resilience, freedom, sovereignty over the only domain that truly belongs to you, your own mind. At some point in life, the old ways stop working. Perhaps it is sudden, a failure, a loss, a betrayal. Perhaps it is quiet, a creeping exhaustion, a sense that nothing is sustainable, a life spent chasing peace that never comes. And in that moment, a question appears, a simple question, a powerful one. Is there another way to live? This question is the beginning of awakening. It is the moment a person realizes that constant stress, constant striving, constant reaction is not the path to freedom. Philosophers across centuries and cultures asked the same question, and the answers converge. Peace does not come from controlling the world. It comes from mastering the self. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." Notice the phrase, "if thou wilt always look." Awakening is not passive. It is not accidental. It requires attention, observation, reflection. You must turn inward, not to escape the world, but to understand it through clarity of mind. This is the inward journey, not across continents, not through wealth or status, not by amassing followers or possessions, but a journey within, toward clarity, toward resilience, toward sovereignty over the only territory that truly belongs to you, your own mind. The awakening is subtle at first, a moment of calm amidst chaos, a pause before reaction, a choice made consciously rather than automatically. It may appear small, even insignificant, but like a single stone cast into a still pond, its ripples extend farther than you imagine. The awakening is also a confrontation. You realize that most of your suffering, most of your anxiety, most of your frustration was never caused by the world. It was caused by the mind's endless resistance, by clinging, by judgment, by expectation. And in that moment, the power shifts. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This is the revelation. Freedom is not granted by circumstances. It is not found in wealth, power, or comfort. It is cultivated internally, and once this dawns, life begins to change, because the mind sees a truth most people miss. The storm was never outside. It was always inside. Pause for emphasis. And with this understanding comes a quiet strength. You can feel emotions without being swept away. You can face uncertainty without collapse. You can encounter adversity without losing center. Life does not become easier, but your mind becomes stronger. You discover detachment. Not coldness, not indifference, but freedom. Freedom from being controlled by every passing event. Freedom from the endless pursuit of perfect conditions. Freedom from the illusion that happiness must come from the outside world. Happiness, peace, resilience, they are cultivated internally, like a garden carefully tended, like a fortress carefully built, like a fire carefully stoked, and once tended, they do not vanish the moment life becomes difficult. This is why Stoicism endures across centuries, across empires, across cultures, because it addresses the truth at the center of human experience. Control what you can, accept what you cannot, master your own mind, and the awakened person begins to notice a quiet miracle. The mind that once reacted impulsively now observes. The emotions that once controlled behavior now inform without enslaving. The chaos that once caused suffering now becomes a tool for growth. This is the beginning of sovereignty. Sovereignty over thoughts, over emotions, over perspective. Sovereignty over the only realm that can never truly be taken away, your own mind. The mind is a kingdom. Its borders invisible, yet absolute. Its territory unlimited, yet entirely yours. And the moment you understand this, everything else falls into perspective. External chaos may rage, fortunes may rise and fall, people may betray, opportunities may vanish, but your inner kingdom, your thoughts, your choices, your attention, they remain under your rule. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Every difficulty, every obstacle, every disappointment is not merely a challenge, it is an opportunity, a chance to reinforce the citadel of your mind, a chance to exercise patience, courage, and wisdom. Sovereignty begins with awareness. Notice the impulses that arise. Notice the judgments that rush in. Notice the fears, the cravings, the anger. Do not suppress them. Do not deny them. Do not surrender to them. Observe, understand, respond, and in that response lies freedom. Epictetus captured this truth succinctly. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The external world can do nothing to you without your consent. A harsh word cannot wound unless you give it power. A failure cannot destroy unless you accept defeat. A loss cannot diminish you unless you surrender your judgment. This is sovereignty, not control over others, not control over circumstances, not control over fortune, control over yourself, over your thoughts, over your emotions, over your perspective. And once this is realized, the storms of life no longer dictate your peace. The chaos outside no longer dictates your stability. The noise of the world no longer dictates your focus. Freedom emerges quietly, like a river flowing under ice, unseen at first, but unstoppable. Every decision, every pause, every conscious choice is a brick in the foundation of this inner kingdom. Every time you resist anger, every time you act with patience, every time you accept what cannot be changed, the walls grow higher, the gates grow stronger, the mind becomes unassailable, and then something remarkable happens. Life continues with the same challenges, the same uncertainties, the same losses, the same betrayals, but you no longer suffer needlessly. You no longer chase illusions. You no longer surrender your peace to the uncontrollable. Because the true battle, the hidden struggle, was never outside. It was always inside. And when you finally see it, when you finally grasp it, the realization is liberating. You are sovereign. Your mind is your citadel. No one can take it from you. No circumstance can destroy it. No fortune can corrupt it. And this is freedom. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private reflections, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if thou wilt ever dig. The source of strength, peace, and happiness was there all along, inside, always waiting, always accessible, always yours. And so the journey comes full circle, from exhaustion before the sun rises, to awareness of the mind's hidden battles, to the forge of character, to mastery of emotion, to building the inner citadel, to awakening, finally, to sovereignty. The mind is no longer a battlefield. It is a kingdom, a place of calm, clarity, and freedom. And once this kingdom is claimed, life never feels the same again, because the storm was never outside, it was always inside. And now, you are the ruler of your own mind. You are sovereign. You are free. You are whole.